Welcome to the deep dive. We're jumping right into a really packed section of ancient texts today, Numbers chapter 21.
Yeah, it's definitely a chapter that covers a lot of ground. You see the Israelites facing, well, all sorts of things.
Right, conflict, consequences, even some, surprising moments of redemption, and then these big military campaigns.
Exactly. So our aim is to kind of unpack that, look at the key points, and maybe some insights you might miss just reading through quickly.
Okay, let's get started. Where does chapter 21 kick off?
It starts pretty much immediately with conflict. Israel's on the move, heading towards new territory, and they run into opposition straight away.
Ah, yes, the Canaanite king of Arad, down in the Negev. The text says he hears Israel is coming along a particular route, the road to Atharim.
That's the one. And he doesn't wait around or send messengers, he just attacks.
Right, attacks them and actually captures some Israelites. So a real immediate threat.
Definitely. It's not diplomatic, it's military action right from the start.
And Israel's response is interesting. They turn to God, but with a vow, a very specific, very intense vow.
Extremely intense. They basically say, look, if you give these people into our hands, we will totally destroy their cities. That's the language used.
Total destruction. That sounds like the concept of cherem, doesn't it? The ban.
Precisely. It's that idea of dedicating the enemy completely to destruction as an offering or judgment. It's fierce, a really strong commitment they're making there.
And does it work? How does the Lord respond?
The text is very clear. It says the Lord listened to their plea. He gave the Canaanites over to them.
So the vow is fulfilled.
It is. Israel carries it out, complete destruction of the people and their towns.
And the place gets a new name because of it, right? Hormah.
Exactly, Hormah, which essentially means destruction or devotion to destruction, a permanent reminder of that event.
So they face an external threat, make this intense vow, and achieve this divinely backed victory. But then the story shifts quite dramatically.
It really does. Almost like whiplash. They've just had this major military success, and then the focus turns completely inward.
How so? What happens next?
Well, they need to continue their journey. They set out from Mount Hor, heading towards the Red Sea to go around Edom, because remember, Edom wouldn't let them pass through their land earlier.
Ah, right. So it's probably a difficult detour.
It seems so. The text explicitly says the people grew impatient on the way. That difficulty, that long way round, starts to wear on them.
And impatience leads to?
It leads to complaining, but not just general grumbling. They speak directly against God and against Moses.
Okay, what are the specific complaints this time? I feel like we've heard complaints before, but these sound serious.
They are. They basically ask, why did you bring us out of Egypt just to die out here in the desert?
Wow. Questioning the entire Exodus.
Exactly. And then they get specific about the conditions. There's no bread, there's no water. And perhaps the most cutting remark, we detest this miserable food.
The manna, the food God was providing.
That's the implication, showing complete contempt for the provision they had while longing for Egypt. It's a deep level of distrust and ingratitude.
And this level of complaint, it doesn't go unnoticed, does it?
No, according to the narrative, it prompts a pretty severe response from the Lord.
Severe how? What's the consequence?
The Lord sends venomous snakes among the people. Fiery serpents, some translations say.
Snakes? In the camp? That sounds terrifying.
It must have been. The text says the snakes bit the people, and tragically, many Israelites died.
So this isn't an enemy Arnie attacking. It's a consequence directly linked to their own words and attitudes.
Precisely. An internal crisis leading to a deadly, almost self-inflicted plague.
But this isn't the end of the story, is it? This terrible moment actually leads somewhere unexpected.
Right. It becomes a catalyst for change. Facing death, seeing the direct result of their words, the people's attitude shifts.
How do they react now?
They go to Moses, and they confess. The text gives us their words. We sinned when we spoke against the Lord and against you. A clear admission of guilt.
And they ask Moses to intervene.
Yes. They plead, pray that the Lord will take the snakes away from us.
So Moses prays for them. And what does God instruct him to do? Because the snakes are still there.
They are. And God's instruction is, well, it's one of the most famous and frankly strangest parts of the whole story. He doesn't just snap his fingers and make the snakes vanish.
Okay.
He tells Moses, make a snake and put it up on a pole.
Make a snake. Like an image of the very thing that's killing them.
Exactly. A bronze snake, as it turns out. And the instruction continues. Anyone who is bitten can look at it and live.
Look at the bronze snake on the pole, and they'll live, even after being bitten by a venomous snake.
That's the instruction. It's completely counterintuitive. It requires an act of looking, of faith, directed towards this symbol God provided.
So Moses does this. He makes the bronze snake.
He does. He follows the instructions precisely, makes the bronze snake, puts it high up on a pole.
And the result?
The text states it simply. Then, when anyone was bitten by a snake and looked at the bronze snake, they lived. It worked. Looking led to living.
Wow. That's profound. From complaint leading to death, to confession, and then life through looking at this symbol. A really powerful sequence.
It absolutely is. It highlights a path to healing that's based purely on trusting God's specific, unusual command, rather than any human remedy. A stark contrast to the military victory earlier.
Yeah, very different kinds of challenges, very different kinds of solutions. So after this intense episode, does the journey get easier?
Well, the journey continues. The narrative goes back to tracking their movements, listing the places they camp.
Okay, where do they go from there?
They move on and camp at Oboth.
Yeah,
Then from Oboth to Iabram,
Payaburim. Where's that described as being?
in the desert region facing Moab, towards the sunrise, so east of Moab.
Right, more geographical markers.
Exactly. They then travel through the Zered Valley and camp alongside the Arnon River.
The Arnon. That sounds significant.
It is. The text points out its importance. It's described as being on the edge of the desert stretching into Amorite territory, and crucially, it forms the border between Moab and the Amorites. These borders are becoming very relevant.
And isn't there a reference to another source here? Something about the book of the wars of the Lord.
Yes, exactly. The text quotes from it or references places mentioned in it like Waheb and Sufa and the ravines, the Arnon and the slopes of the ravines and so on. It sort of adds historical weight, connecting their journey to other known records or traditions about that area.
Interesting. Grounding the story in the landscape. Where to next?
They arrive at a place called Beer.
Beer, like the drink.
Probably just means well. And this place is significant because, again, it involves water, but the interaction is totally different from the earlier complaining.
Oh, how so?
This time, the Lord tells Moses, "Gather the people together and I will give them water." It's a promise of provision, not a response to complaint.
And do the people react differently this time?
Completely differently. Instead of complaining, they break into song. The text even includes the song they sang.
A song about the well.
Yes. Spring up, O well! Sing about it, about the well that the princes dug, that the nobles of the people sank the nobles with scepters and staffs.
That's fascinating. It mentions the princes and nobles digging it. So maybe not purely miraculous this time.
It seems to imply a combination that God's promise of water, facilitated by the leaders' efforts, it's a moment of, communal participation and celebration, a real high point compared to the snake incident.
Definitely a different vibe.
Oh.
So from the well at Beer, where does the journey take them?
They keep moving. From the desert to Matana, then Nahaliel, then Bamoth.
Just listing the stops.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Until they reach a valley in Moab near the top of Mount Pisgah, which overlooks the wasteland or desert. And it's from here that the next major interaction begins.
Okay, what happens now? Another internal crisis.
No, this time it's external again.
Yeah.
Diplomatic at first. Israel sends messengers to Sihon, the king of the Amorites.
Sihon, the Amorites. They're now near Amorite territory, bordering Moab. What's the message?
It's a request for peaceful passage. Very specific. Let us pass through your country. We won't go into fields or vineyards, won't drink well water. We'll stick to the king's highway until we're through your territory.
Sounds reasonable. Stick to the main road. Don't bother anyone. Just pass through.
You'd think so. But Sihon's response is a flat no. He refuses passage.
Okay, so he just blocks them.
He does more than that. He musters his entire army and marches out into the desert specifically to fight Israel. He meets them at a place called Jahaz.
So diplomacy failed. It's battle time again.
It is. And the outcome.
Israel wins. Give me the pattern.
Decisively. The text says Israel put Sihon and his army to the sword and took over his land.
Took his land. How much land?
It specifies the territory from the Arnon River in the south up to the Jabbok River in the north. But it adds an interesting detail only as far as the Ammonite border because their border was fortified. So it defines the western part of Sihon's kingdom.
And they don't just conquer, they occupy.
Yes, they capture all the Amorite cities in that region, including Heshbon, Sihon's capital, and all its surrounding villages. They settle there.
Heshbon. The text adds some background on that city, doesn't it?
It does. It mentions that Heshbon was Sihon's city, and that he himself had captured it from a previous king of Moab, pushing the Moabites back to the Arnon.
So Sihon was already a conqueror. It emphasizes his power.
Exactly. It shows that Israel didn't just defeat some minor chieftain. They took down a significant regional power who had recently expanded his own territory.
And then there's poetry again, right?
Yeah.
Commenting on this victory.
Yes, the source includes verses attributed to poets. Some lines seem to mockingly invite people back to rebuild Sihon City. Come to Heshbon, let Sihon City be restored. Others describe its destruction vividly. Fire went out from Heshbon, it consumed Ar of Moab.
And lines about Moab suffering.
Right. Woe to you, O Moab! He has given up his sons as fugitives to Sihon, king of the Amorites. This probably refers back to Sihon's earlier victory over Moab, highlighting the reversal of fortune. The conqueror is now conquered.
And then the poem confirms Israel's total victory over Sihon.
Yeah, concluding with lines like, "But we have overthrown them, Heshbon is destroyed, we have demolished them." It really hammers home the completeness of Israel's conquest.
So the result is clear. Israel settles in the land of the Amorites, a major step.
Huge. They're now holding territory east of the Jordan. But the chapter isn't quite finished.
Still more. After defeating Sihon.
One more major encounter. First, there's a quick note about sending spies to Jazer, capturing its settlements, and driving out the Amorites there too.
Okay, consolidated control. Then what?
Then they turn and head north towards Bashan.
Bashan. That means King Og.
That's right. Og, king of Bashan, isn't happy either. He comes out with his whole army to fight them at Edrei, another full-scale military confrontation.
Does God speak to Moses again before this battle?
Yes, very similarly to the Sihon situation. The Lord tells Moses, "Do not be afraid of him, for I have handed him over to you with his whole army and his land. Do to him what you did to Sihon."
So divine assurance again. Same instructions, same promised outcome.
Exactly. The pattern is repeated.
And the battle.
Same result.
Yeah.
Israel strikes down Og, his sons, and his entire army. The text emphasizes leaving them no survivors. Total victory.
And they take his land too.
They take possession of his land as well. So the chapter ends with Israel having defeated these two powerful Amorite kings, Sihon and Og, and controlling a large area east of the Jordan River.
Wow. What a chapter. It really swings wildly, doesn't it? From that vow at Hormah to the despair in the snake.
And the bronze serpent and looking to live.
And the song at the well, the failed diplomacy, and finally these massive military victories.
It really covers a huge range of the Israelite experience: internal struggles, external threats, divine judgment, divine deliverance, human effort, military might. It's all packed in there.
It definitely gives you a lot to think about. So maybe a final thought for our listeners based on everything we've just walked through in Numbers 21.
Well, something that stands out is the contrast in how different crises are resolved. You have the snake plague, an internal spiritual crisis addressed through repentance, and this highly symbolic act of looking, of faith.
Right. No fighting involved there. Just looking and trusting.
Exactly. But then you have the encounters with Sihon and Og. Israel makes a reasonable request for passage. It's refused with hostility, and the resolution is military conquest, explicitly backed by God's assurance.
Two very different kinds of threats, met in very different ways.
So maybe the question to ponder is, what does this variety from the fierce vow to the bronze snake to the diplomatic request followed by force tell us about the complexities presented in this narrative? How does it portray the relationship between faith, obedience, community survival, and the confronting of opposition, both internal and external?